communities, our cities.
Widespread outrage following the shooting death of a Minneapolis woman at the hands of an ICE agent. The federal government maintaining the act was justified, saying the officer acted in self-defense.
This was an act of domestic terrorism.
As thousands protest here in New York City, Governor Hochul sits down for an exclusive interview with PIX on Politics. Her message to New Yorkers and to ICE. Plus, more on the historic announcement expanding free and affordable childcare.
Being able to serve around 2,000 children in this city this fall.
As the city launches a 2Care program, providing financial relief to many young New York families. Governor Hochul explaining how the state can foot the bill. Plus, a look ahead at the governor's upcoming State of the State address as she enters a pivotal re-election year. It's all coming up in my exclusive sit-down on PIX on Politics starts right now.
This is PIX on Politics with Dan Mannarino.
And welcome to PIX on Politics, everybody. I am Dan Mannarino. 2026 beginning with some highs and lows. The high for many New York parents, the announcement of a free child care program starting at the age of 2. That was welcome news for so many. Governor Hochul and Mayor Mamdani making that announcement just this week, together laying out the plan. They say the state will cover financially to provide these programs for so many New Yorkers. And that plan includes launching a 2Care program, right? Focusing first on high need areas. And the governor says it's a first step in expanding universal pre-K, then statewide. So there are many questions, though, on how this will be paid for. And I sat down with the governor to talk about that after that big announcement. But unfortunately, we also needed to discuss the troubling events coming out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. Strong reaction across the country, including here in New York City. You can see, right, crowds in Foley Square earlier this week after a woman was shot by an ICE agent and killed. We tackle those topics and much more in my exclusive sit-down with Governor Kathy Hochul. Take a look as she goes on the record. And Governor Hochul is now joining me back here on PIX and Politics in the New Year. Great to see you, Governor. Happy New Year.
Thank you very much, Dan. Good to be back.
I want to begin, obviously, the big announcement on universal child care, but at the same time, there's big news playing out nationally that is having ripple effects here in New York with what played out in Minneapolis with the killing of this woman by an ICE agent. In fact, Kristi Noem was just here in New York City saying ICE is going to remain in New York. When you look at this, first and foremost, what was your reaction to that shooting, and should those ICE agents be charged and prosecuted?
It was inevitable that something like this would happen, so you have to go back to the primary question: why are they still in places like Minneapolis? 2,000 ICE agents. They have been aggressively going after the residents of that city and that region for a long time, and if your effort is to get rid of the worst of the worst, the baddest of the bad, this is what the president promised us, you should identify them and remove them. I'm okay with that. But why do you have to be around and just harass people and continue this onslaught on people that are just trying to make a living for themselves and their families? So no, I'm shocked at that. But what hurts even more, and Dan, you're a parent.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a 6-year-old who woke up yesterday with a mom and went to bed an orphan, going to be raised by a grandfather, a father she lost. I mean, I cannot even comprehend the pain in that family, where that child's going to grow up without parents because of the untrained, in my opinion, behavior. Because legitimate law enforcement, who take longer training and are committed to their work, this doesn't happen with them, or it's very rare, because they know how to de-escalate.
Yeah.
You de-escalate. You don't go up there and be aggressive. So this was something that we do not want to see in New York. I'd be very opposed to any escalation in the number of ICE agents coming here, but they're just running amok around this country, so we don't really know what their next maniacal design is on a place like New York City. We just don't know.
Kristi Noem today just said that that the ICE will remain in New York, right? And you said today that you would like to give people recourse if they're impacted negatively by ICE actions. And you said you'll have more about that next week. But can you explain a little bit what recourse looks like, what a negative interaction may be with ICE?
Well, a negative interaction is having your mother killed, okay? That child is going to have lifelong expenses, so that's, in my judgment, a private right of action should be available in those cases, and we'll make sure it happens in New York. So there's recourse in the courts against an individual who acts outside the color of law, right? This is not something that's supposed to happen in the normal course of doing your business. We also had a case where 2 journalists were injured, covering the story right here at 26 Federal Plaza, right? So they should have a recourse. The business owner who's had their lifelong business that they worked so hard on, a little bodega, a little pizza parlor, literally ransacked and destroyed, they ought to have some recourse. So when
is that money?
New York, yes, more. When New Yorkers' constitutional rights are being trampled upon, they ought to know they've got a governor who stood up for them, changed the law, and allowed them to at least be able to grieve what happened to them before a judge and find out what can be done.
And lastly, I want to move on, but the mayor of Minneapolis told ICE very bluntly to get out of his city. What is your message to ICE right now, since Kristi Noem today said they will remain and is targeting New York because of the sanctuary status?
We don't need them. We don't need them here. And they keep mischaracterizing even what sanctuary status means. We will help anyone, help any agent, assist in the apprehension and prosecution of the people who are committing these serious crimes. We have a different definition. They think anyone who crossed over here is a serious criminal. That's not what the president was describing when he said he was going to have ICE come and remove them. So I think their effort is to create chaos. They want to see this happening in the streets. They want to draw out the protests. And they want to send images around the world like they did from Los Angeles that shows that one vehicle that's on fire or something that's going to create fear in the eyes of people who are witnessing it. That's what they're going for here, and we're onto it. And I'm just asking them, please stand down. Crime is down dramatically here in the city of New York and across the state. We don't need you for a law enforcement presence. We don't need National Guard for that either. We can manage very well on our own. Please do not stay and do not escalate the number of people that are already assigned to this duty. Okay,
all of this happening on the same day that you and Mayor Mamdani had a very big announcement, and I think parents are very excited to hear about the goal to get to this universal child care plan, which has many layers to it, first and foremost, right? So let's talk about the timing of it all for parents, specifically when you get to the age of 2. Mr. Mamdani and you had that press conference today saying 2,000 seats this year, and then it'll eventually go to universal. Talk about the timeline.
Right. We've worked closely since the mayor was elected, and I believed in his vision to make sure that every young person in the city of New York has child care available to them. It's a lifeline for families who are suffering so much from this affordability crisis. 26 to 40,000 hours a year is more than a cost of a SUNY or CUNY tuition. That's what parents are having to be under the crushing burden of spending that kind of money to get child care. So what we're doing is, for the city, going to help beef up the slots available for the 4-year-old and 3-year-old programs, because you have situations where there may be slots for this, but there's openings in a borough far, far away and not in your own neighborhood. Right. And so that's what has to be changed, and we're going to give them money. So part of that plan is to guarantee somebody, if they live in a neighborhood and a spot opens up, they don't have to travel to another borough. They're guaranteed a seat in their neighborhood. Yes, and that's part of our vision for universal child care. The mayor has also said that, and we're funding this, just so you know, we're making this happen with state dollars, that he'll identify specific neighborhoods for this upcoming year to fund over 2,000 child care slots. So that'll happen this year, those 2,000. Statewide, and I announced this in my state of the state literally a year ago, that we would have universal child care in the state of New York, including the cities, over a certain amount of time. But we had to build up the infrastructure. We didn't have enough locations. We had to put $100 million toward the bricks and mortar, give higher reimbursements to the providers, have bonuses and support for them to get the wages they deserve. So we had a lot of work to do. We're still doing that work. But I also want to get on a path to have universal 4-year-old pre-K across the state by 2028. And then we layer in the 3-year-old, we get the 2-year-old. And I also have these community programs that I'm launching, and a few pilot programs that'll be for infants up to 3 years old. So we have it's a vast endeavor, layered. But this is the kind of ambition and vision that I have for this state, is to address the real concerns of parents. And today, you can almost hear it across the state. This collective sigh of relief that we have a governor, a mom governor, who had to give up a career she loved for a long time because I could not find childcare. I don't want that fate to befall anybody. Our economy needs them working as well.
Governor, you pledged to fully fund the plan in New York City for 2 years. So what is that going to cost you and the state? And what happens after those 2 years? Are you relying on the city to then self-fund?
No, it's too far out to project the numbers at this point. I mean, it's very unusual to even make a commitment for next year.
Yeah.
But I decided to do that so people know that this is serious. This is for real. So just not knowing those numbers now does not mean that we're committed to this in the long haul. So I'm excited about it.
So where does the money come from, right? And obviously the question has been raised many times to you about whether or not you would like to raise taxes on the 1% or the corporate tax as well. Is that on the table, raising taxes for 1% in your state of the state to pay for some of this?
No, what we've been able to do is identify existing revenues to cover this. We worked hard. We're trying to do some internal cost cutting. I went back this summer and asked all of our agencies to tighten up and see if we could find any savings. But also, you know, a lot of our revenues come from Wall Street bonuses when they're doing well. They did very well this year. And those numbers just came out a couple days ago for us to have a better idea of how much money we have to work with. So we don't need the money outside of our revenues. And, you know, for the record, you know, we've already had a tax increase on wealthy people when I extended what was supposed to be an expiration of a tax increase on the wealthy just last year. So I extended that, I think, till 2032. So the wealthy are paying higher taxes in New York now, and we're going to continue benefiting from those revenues.
And you know you're going to get this question a lot, right? So let's just put it to bed. And the mayor keeps saying, I'm going to work with Albany on getting them to raise taxes. So I know you're saying you raised them already, but is it off the table on further increases for taxing the wealthy, the 1%?
Yes.
Off the table?
Yes, because I don't think it makes sense to tax anyone, or the wealthy in particular, for just the sake of raising taxes. If you have an ambitious agenda, something that I have supported for a long time, I want to get this done as well. We're aligned in our interest, and this is the common interest that I spoke to the mayor even before he was sworn in. We had many conversations about how to get this accomplished, and for us to be able to deliver this today, I think that's the win that we should be talking about. And if I'm telling you the money's there to pay for it, that's the story.
All right, so when we come back, see the Mamdani campaign promise that Governor Hochul is actually not on board with, at least right now. The rest of our conversation when we come back. Fix on Politics back in just 2 minutes.
You're watching PIX on Politics with Dan Mannarino.
Welcome back to PIX on Politics, everybody. So Governor Kathy Hochul and Mayor Mamdani lockstep in their plans for providing child care for New Yorkers. However, when it comes to another Mamdani campaign promise, the two not quite on the same page. Mayor Mamdani called for fast and free buses, but as we approach Governor Hochul's State of the State address, I did ask about the possibility of that making it into her agenda. Here's more of our conversation. I want to ask you while we're still here, because you are aligned with Mayor Mamdani on a lot. We heard you just today with the universal child care and also on crime numbers. Transportation has been a big issue in fast and free buses, and it's a cornerstone of his campaign. I spoke to the MTA chairman this week who said everything has to be methodically planned out. Are you in favor? Will it be in the State of the State, free bus plan for New York City?
Not at this time, but we've also said nothing is a permanent no. We're having conversations. But in terms of my budget going forward, this was a big chunk. This is important for us to get this priority done. The city's going to need us for a lot of help this year.
Yeah.
When they look at the books and decide, you know, what their other, not just priorities are, but what they're required to do. You know, the housing, the education, the program, the social services program, the homelessness programs, all that has to be paid for with city revenues. They're going to be looking at where the gaps are. They're going to be coming to us to ask for that kind of support in certain areas. And I think that's the primary conversations we'll be having throughout the budget process, how we can help the city support its residents.
Do you worry with some of the plans that you need federal dollars? And just this week, President Trump came out and said, I'm holding $10 billion while I'm investigating fraud in New York City and other Democratic states. Are you worried about federal dollars being held? And is there action you could take to get that money?
No, we're looking at litigation, filing a lawsuit within hours, if not tomorrow morning. And just think about what happened here. At the same time that we're making a major investment in New York families to support them, Donald Trump is literally declaring war on kids. What am I talking about? Wasn't that just a couple months ago when they stopped feeding our kids by eliminating SNAP during the budget shutdown? Then they stopped our kids from being able to be healthy by saying we don't need any more vaccinations for them. Child care, after health care, then now child care, eliminating child care for families. It seems like there's no low they will not go to. The depths of cruelty associated with this are profound. But it doesn't just hurt Democratic states. They've singled out 5 of us. This is a county-run program, the child care program. We're just a pass-through. It's going out to red counties all over New York as well. Yeah. And those constituents who are looking at their Republican county leaders and their members of Congress are saying, wait a minute, what's this all about? I thought I had child care covered. So they're going to have to answer for that as well. And that may get them to shift. But we lost almost $4 billion by just sending a letter alleging some kind of fraud without any evidence. And they want us to turn over an incredible volume of information that's going to be requiring us to give personal identifying information as well as Social Security numbers. Now, let's think about what they're asking for. They're just using this as a fishing expedition to go after New Yorkers.
Okay, so litigation it is. I'm up against the clock here. I got to get one question in about the re-election campaign here. I know you're not going to tell me, but do you have a lieutenant governor pick? We'll
have the lieutenant governor picked by the time we have our convention, which is just a few weeks away, February 6th. So we have a lot of contenders. There's a lot of interest in this position.
All right, there you go. Governor Hochul, I appreciate you coming in, and we'll talk to you throughout the year. Thank you so much.
Sounds good. All right, thank you.
And our thanks again to Governor Hochul for coming in. And while I was speaking to the governor, Henry Rossoff was very busy heading to City Hall to go one-on-one with Mayor Zohran Mamdani. So we're going to get his response to the governor's stance on free buses and more when we come back.
You're watching PIX on Politics with Dan Mannarino.
Welcome back, everybody. And it was certainly a big week here with PIX 11 sitting down with the important leaders who are making the vital decisions for New Yorkers, right? You just saw my interview with Governor Kathy Hochul. Well, that was going on. At the same time, on the same day, senior political reporter Henry Rossoff sat down with Mayor Zohran Mamdani. And Henry joining me now. Obviously, the mayor in week 1 of really his first week of being mayor, a very busy week, to say the least.
Yeah, and the interview was kind of timed, so it was about an hour after yours, so I was able to get a crucial piece of reaction to that bus news. But this was a wide-ranging sit-down exactly 1 week after inauguration. We spoke about everything from the big child care announcement to housing and his controversial head of the Office of Tenant Protections. But let's get to that press I did of the mayor on buses and what the governor just told you, Dan. On buses, we actually just sat down with the governor today. As you know, we were just talking about this before we got going. One of the things she said, notably on buses, unlike childcare, is she doesn't seem ready to move on it yet. She said it's not going to be in her State of the State address next week. It's not going to be in her budget. But she's not closing the door. Are you willing to wait a year if she says maybe next year, or are you going to move forward with some version of free buses before then?
I'm always going to advocate for our agenda, and the fact of it is that this is a critical issue because 1 in 5 New Yorkers couldn't afford to ride the bus, and that was before it was $3. So what we need to do is show those New Yorkers that they still have a place in the city, and I'll always keep making the case to our governor and to everyone in the city as to why that's an important thing.
But how do you do something without her support on this particular issue at the intersection of the MTA? In your budget, do you say, here's the money, let's do it now?
Well, I think some of this is a hypothetical that I hope not to arrive to. And I will keep making that case because we're very early in the budget process.
Yeah, and it's very interesting, Henry, because Kathy Hochul herself said not at this time and then kind of left the door open, right, saying no, it doesn't mean it forever. So there is some wiggle room, it seems, there. And look, at 8 days in, he got universal child care.
Yeah, and as he says, like, let's negotiate this out. But the governor's sending a pretty clear signal, not just not tomorrow, but not this year. Right. Is waiting a year going to be acceptable to a mayor who ran on this? That's the lingering question. Something else I asked him about, Dan, was ICE. And Kristi Noem coming to town. And she was really calling out the mayor pretty directly. He kind of brushed that aside. But the point the Homeland Security Secretary was making was essentially the NYPD should, in certain circumstances, cooperate with ICE. Let's take a look at my clip with Mr. Mamdani on that. Her primary focus here in town was talking about the takedown of dozens of people she says are in the country illegally and affiliated with gangs. And she also encouraged you and the NYPD to work with them on those criminal prosecution efforts. Will your NYPD work with ICE on that level?
My NYPD will follow the law here in New York City. And the law, as we have it with our sanctuary city policies, allows for city government to work with the federal administration when it comes to 170 or so serious crimes if someone has been convicted of them. What it does not allow for, however, is civil enforcement or the assistance of a federal administration's attempt to fulfill its pledge to create the single largest deportation force in American history. And what I've said directly to the president, as well as what I've said to New Yorkers across the city, is that these ICE raids, they are cruel and inhumane. They do nothing to actually further the cause of public safety.
And on the issue of people protesting these ICE raids, especially after what happened in Minneapolis, we've already seen smaller protests. I believe a bigger one's actually planned for this evening. Will the strategic response group within the NYPD still be responding to protests? I know you've had some serious concerns about this, but obviously not a lot of time yet to implement that change.
I continue to share those concerns around the strategic response groups, and I continue to be committed to creating a new police response to the exercising of First Amendment rights. And what it comes back to is that this was a unit that was created initially to respond as part of counterterrorism efforts. That does not need to be conflated with the response to New Yorkers using their First Amendment rights. And so what we need to do is both keep those rights as a sanctity in New York City and keep New Yorkers safe, and I'm confident we'll be able to do that.
But as of right now tonight, there's a big protest. Will the SRG be out there because that's the option right now?
The first response that we'll have from the NYPD will be that of community affairs.
And plenty more from our conversation, including the phone call that Mr. Mamdani had with President Trump just after the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. I asked why this was the first call as opposed to some other issue like ICE or like infrastructure. Dan.
What do you say?
He said that this is because I was going to criticize him in public, and I wanted to be transparent about that, and we had a very direct conversation, and he was appreciative of it.
Interesting. President Trump said, I was surprised he went after me on Venezuela, but then still said, I like the guy.
Yeah.
So there you go. Henry, great job with that, and his full
you.
interview is now posted as well. We'll be right back, everybody. And that'll do it for another episode of PIX on Politics, everybody. I'm Dan Mannarino. I'll see you next week.